560.com. The materials and information provided are for informational purposes only and are not intended for use as diagnosis, prevention, or treatment of a health or other problem, or as a substitute for consulting a licensed medical professional. Some concepts presented herein may be theoretical and have little or no scientific substantiation. Users are advised to conduct their own diligence.
Welcome to Ask the Experts, where you'll learn about a variety.
Mike's up.
Today we delve
Thank
into
you.
holistic healing and whole food nutrition with the Natural Health Authority, Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing. And now here's Jason.
And now here's Jason. Indeed. Hello there. This is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. We got another show for you today, and the show is called Gut Wars, just like Star Wars. It's going to actually have a lot of the same themes, and they're going to be interchangeable. This is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. I am a quantum reflex analysis practitioner, soft tissue specialist. I'm a health expert. I am an authority in terms of this is what's wrong with me. What do you do about it? How can you help me? I can help you. My office is 734-985-5891. The name of my company is Strategic Healing because that's what we do. Is we strategically discover what's the strategy to get healing. How do you heal your body? Okay. Right now, I am also online, which is I'm on my Facebook Live. Which is that Strategic Healing. Later, I put it on my this show, and all my shows are on my YouTube channel, which is Jason Eagle QRA. You can go back and listen to them and watch them and everything like that. And very soon, I'm going to be announcing a podcast. I'm starting a podcast, and I'll give that address out and where you can get it. You know, any podcast where you go to iTunes or Spotify or Pandora or whatever, you'll find me there. But I'm just announcing that, get ready, that I'm going to start doing that too. So, because some people like to listen to the radio, but some of the young folks, they don't listen to the radio, and especially AM radio, but they do watch Facebook, and they do get Instagram. I'm also on Instagram, but a lot of people like to listen to podcasts, so I'm going to be there too. Okay. So, again, if you want to call my office and if what you hear today makes sense to you about you or any of your family members or people you know, hey, I think that's them. They've been talking about this, and this guy sounds like he knows what he's doing. This guy sounds like he's got some answers here. I do have some answers, and what today is all about is what's called Gut Wars, which is, this is an old, what's called naturopathic. The very first doctors, which is they're treating you with nature. So the original doctors, before we even had all these drugs that are pharmaceuticals that come from petroleum products and stuff like that, basically not stuff from the real world. Old doctors use stuff from the real world, and many other practitioners in natural health is we just use stuff from the real world. But what's the real world is you're alive and your body does stuff. And everybody has to eat and everybody had to digest. And so this is an old phrase that says death begins in the colon. What's the colon? The colon, that's where you put your waste products. That's where your fecal matter goes. That's where your boo-boo goes. That's where the poop goes, it's a container to hold that until it's ready to empty it out. It's the garbage, right? And if the garbage sits around too long, people where they got a bunch of empty Pixie boxes and dirty socks and stuff like that, and you walk in and it's like, oh, golly, this is really stinky in here. How can you stand it? And they're laying there going, I don't know what you're talking about. They've lived in it so long that they don't know. They don't know their house, stinks. So the people that own a lot of cats that don't know that it smells like cat pee, and they couldn't recognize it. That's a part of our body. So if we don't get that stuff out fast enough. Now, this is the other thing so what happens when you don't get waste products out fast enough and your gut doesn't work correctly? When your gut doesn't, especially when too many toxins are sitting around, what it does is it allows for Star Wars to happen, which is these super powerful bacterias and other types of things, meaning viruses and parasites and just other alien life forms, they take over. Now, they were always there in the beginning, but it's like now they take over. Now, here in America, it's the worst because we have so many antibiotics. There are so many antibiotics in our foods. We take a lot of antibiotics, and antibiotics is kind of like, Vietnam, it's like napalm, and it just comes out of the plane like this fire gel. And it just goes, or it's Agent Orange, it's this stuff that goes in a mist and it kills all the plants. It kills everything and nothing is left alive. And then what crawls out of the holes are the dark nasties, because they developed the ability to survive in that, but they became like Frankensteins, right? The gut wars. Who are the casualties? Who are the refugees of the gut wars going on in your system? These are the refugees. These are the casualties. Arthritis, including rheumatoid arthritis, colitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, Epstein-Barr, depression, stomach ulcers, bowel cancers. These are all part of the gut wars. All joint problems, meaning there's a war going on there. There's too many of the bad guys, not enough of the good guys. And that's what's causing the problem. These are infections. Okay, that's the best way to describe it, which is like an alien invasion. It's an infection. They weren't supposed to be here. And if they were just supposed to be in the background. There's supposed to be more good people out there functioning, and the neighborhood worked. Now nobody knows what's going on. Thyroid conditions, all hormonal conditions, people who are obese, people who are just fat, can't lose weight and are just fat. Prostate problems, including men's prostate cancer. Uterus problems, including uterus cancer, pancreatic cancer, bowel cancer, fibroid tumors, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, heart disease, all autoimmune disease, all pain, all joint problems, pretty much everything you could think of is in the gut. It started in the gut. And if you really want to get through, you got to finish it. It starts here, it finishes here. So this war starts here. Once you started it, we got to fight it. But see, it's not really a fight. It really is. It's about a balance. It's the same thing about with Star Wars, which is the Empire is too strong. The rebels are too weak. The system is out of balance. And the balance is the Force. Use the Force to bring about balance. And the Force needs balance itself, which is, it's not about getting rid of all of these aliens. It's like they need to stay in their place and they need to interact. They need to play nice. You need the things that live together that play nice, okay? So now we get into gut microbes, okay? GI, gastrointestinal microbes. And that is just a whole plethora of everything. But there's a bunch of stuff that's living in there is linked with autoimmune pathology. It's linked with all kinds of what's called pathology or what's called pathogenic. We're going to talk about this over and over again. All of these things, arthritis and Epstein-Barr and obesity, all relate to some form of pathology. So there's part of medicine, which is there's a pathologist. That's the guy that studies an infection. Well, let's break up that word. It starts with pathos, pathogenic. Pathos. What is pathos? Pathos is an old Greek word, and what it means is suffering. Remember that Yoda thing? This leads to this. Suffering leads to evil, right? Suffering. Pathos is, or pathology is, or pathogenesis is suffering generator, meaning that's what genic means. These scientific terms, they have real terms in what they mean, and it means you're growing. Your Genesis, the first book of the Bible is where did it all start? This is the creation story, but this is the creation story of suffering, of tragedy, of sadness, of pitifulness. This is what pathos means, which turns into all illness. Illness comes from your suffering first and suffering over a period of time that it then turns into an illness. We say I'm suffering because I have an illness. Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The egg comes first. Okay, the egg microbe comes first. It gets into your body, and your stomach acid couldn't kill it off, and you didn't have enough minerals and everything like that. And this thing that normally would have been killed off in your body or just passed through without hatching has now hatched inside your body. And now it turns into a worm that turns into some sort of larger living life form. And it's smart. These things are very, very smart, like these viruses. They know how to communicate with each other. So over 400 species of microbes live in the human intestinal tract. They've weighed it in an average human, that's 15 pounds. This weight exceeds the weight of most of the other organs. So it's heavier than your liver. It's heavier than your brain. The number of microbes in the intestinal tract. Now get ready. This is where Star Wars comes back again. The number of microbes in the intestinal tract exceeds the numbers of stars in the galaxy. That's a lot, okay? There's more of these cells, and most of those cells are not you. They are not your own cells. They are the beneficial bacteria, but then they're also the harmful bacteria. What we really are talking about is with health is who's supposed to be there, right? Now, one of the leading things that happens to us is over a period of time, we have developed paper-thin guts. So healthy gut bacteria, the mucous membrane of the healthy people is colonized by bifidobacteria, lactobacilli, bacteriocytes, it's a hard one to say, Escherichia, and Enterococci, okay? These are just a whole bunch of this stuff that is good, okay? Now, as we have been taking antibiotics, and let's say a person was raised on, what do you want to call it? Raised without antibiotics. Let's say you got hippie parents and they, never got antibiotics to my kids, but yet they're eating foods and they're eating grocery store foods. All of the animals are given the antibiotics. The antibiotics are sprayed on many of our vegetables, and it leaches into that. And so we are constantly bathed in a bunch of antibiotics. And that means antibiotics. Biotic is life. Bio is life. It's anti-life. But see, it's not selective. It's just, especially the really powerful antibiotics are just like a shotgun, just blasting it out. Okay? Taking into account the significant changes of colonization resistance in the colon mucous membrane in the remission period of RA, it is necessary to apply bacterial therapy using bacterial drugs containing bifidobacteria and lactobacteria. This is talking about some of the newest understanding of science is can even the drugs be coated with like a yogurt, something to rebuild. So we're going to talk later about taking probiotics and prebiotics and postbiotics and all this other stuff. But, these are the rebels. These are the normal people. They're very weak, and you can't throw them into a really dangerous neighborhood. They're not going to make it. So one of the goals is you got to first start by getting these numbers of things down, okay? So we're talking about the mucous membrane that's inside your gut. Your gut is like you are sausage. You know what sausage is made out of? Or hot dogs. Has a skin on it, and they stuff it with the meats and stuff like that. Well, that's what you are. You are basically these tubes, and inside these tubes you have a lining, which is a mucosal lining, just like the mucus in your throat or the mucus in your nose. It's in order to be slippery and also be a coating so that stuff slides through, but it's a coating that actually is your immune system. So if anything's bad there, it will start killing it. Here's another disease, what's called ankylosing spondylosis. That means your bones are melting, okay? The incidence of gut inflammation was found in 70% of the cases. This provides further argument that joint disease is triggered through the gut. All of these conditions I'm talking about, there's something that's discovered, which is called increased intestinal permeability. Permeability means like a screen. It can go through. There's a wall that's impermeable. Water's not flowing through that wall, but it punch a bunch of holes in that wall, it's going to get through. It becomes permeable. So your gut is not supposed to be permeable, meaning the food is not supposed to go into your guts. You are tubes, and then around those tubes are your tissues. And if you remember those old Western movies is there's nothing worse than a gut shot. Person who gets shot with a bullet that then perforates, and now they're leaking digestive juices, including their own waste products, into their gut. You're going to get peritonitis, you're going to get gangrene, and that's where the guy says, leave me a bullet and go away. Like, there's nothing you can do for me. What I'm saying is that instead of one big bullet, what it is tiny little pinhole pricks. And so one of the telltale signs is when people eat foods and then their gut swells. They swell up, and sometimes the gut is hard, like the big beer belly. You go up to touch the big beer belly guy, and it's like a hard inflated basketball. Well, a lot of that is inflammation, because the gut, every time they eat something, it's leaching into the system, and food is not supposed to be there. Waste products is not supposed to be there. So your immune system gets turned on, and it goes after that. And it's like the cops in the neighborhood. They're not there because they're, just getting paid. They're there because somebody called them. There's something going on. Thyroid disease and bowel infection. Okay, there's huge relationship between bowel infection, meaning that's your lower gut where all the nasties sit, if it doesn't get out of there fast enough. So fast forward ahead, I'm going to tell you a couple things that I've been telling you every single show of things to do to fix this. It's very simple. You can very, quickly fix these things. The Mediclay. Mediclay is one of the things, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Bowel infection is today generally accepted that intestinal flora is deeply involved in the pathogenesis, that's that word again, suffering generator, okay? Illness generator, the pathogenesis of human inflammatory bowel disease, IBD. Although the exact presence of unwanted or lack of specific crucial bacteria is not yet known. They still don't know, because the testing for this stuff, do you have the good stuff? Do you have bad stuff? We don't. It's still the most sensitive testing, which is the PCR test. It's still not sensitive enough so we don't even have really good doctor tests for you to say, oh, you've got this problem. So we can test that you've got Crohn's and arthritis, and we can see that, but we can't necessarily test very well. So this is why the doctors don't necessarily tell you about this, is because they can't necessarily prove it very well. Now, the muscle testing that I do does prove it. And again, forget about the muscle testing. If you take some things like garlic and the apple cider vinegar and the Mediclay and a number of other things, and you feel better, then that's why. It's because it proves what you are having a difficulty proving. But what do you care if it gets proved on a paper or not, if it works? That's the point, is the testing, even my testing, is where the rubber meets the road is, did it change your life? And if you even start doing something that nobody told you about and you just found out about it, and it worked for you, then it worked for you. So we just talked about, thyroid and celiac disease. Celiac, what is that? That's the people that, and I would also put peanut allergies. Celiac, which is people that have a wheat intolerance. And really bad celiac is if there's a little bit of wheat that got mixed in that, like, oh, I gave them the soup and I didn't tell them, that they could start bleeding. And blood could start pouring out of them. It's very dangerous, and then they could swell up like crazy. And so Crohn's disease, or not Crohn's, but celiac disease, that's this gluten sensitivity. Now you can have people like me, I'm not celiac, but I'm gluten insensitive, meaning if I eat too much of it at all, it causes problems. It causes swelling, it causes my joint problems and stuff like that. Probiotic protection. Westerners lack, to the large extent, immunomodulatory and fiber-fermenting lactic acid bacteria, which is present in a more primitive and rural lifestyle. So here's the reason why we can say we know it is the Western system. Just like I said in a couple shows ago, which is, smoking's bad, but, people in other parts of the world who smoke more than us don't have the same conditions. So, for instance, people that live in other parts of the world where, in particular, they eat large amounts of fiber fermenting fiber that ferments. That means starches. So that's why when you go into, let's say, central Mexico, people that eat lots of beans, they don't have these problems. You don't see that many people that are super obese. You don't see as many arthritis and stuff. You don't see a lot of it. You don't see as much depression. You go over to, for instance, over into Japan and China, whether it be the rice or they eat things like manioc. They eat a lot more of fibers. That's part of their diet. You go over to, the Polynesians where they eat lots of taro. The Filipinos where they have lots of fiber that is in the vegetable fibers, fibers. So even the vegans where you're able to have a lot more vegetable fibers. These vegetables can then break down into things that keep things really nice. If you are an American, that's why we start recommending taking galactin. Galactin is this powder that you pour into some water and it just becomes drinkable water. And this is a prebiotic fiber, okay? There's a lot that we can do. Autoimmune diseases, thyroid disease, it's found because there's not enough of the good bacteria and good things. Now we get into another thing called fat bugs. Literally, are you fat and obese because you have a bug, or what you would call a bactericide? So the two phyla, when you get into science, if you remember biology class, it's called phyla, which is like the family. So the phyla of anaerobic so the two phyla are mainly anaerobic, which means they don't like oxygen. So that's why they get into the gut and they also get into the joints. So could literally people that are obese in their belly because of the things that are being stored or the things that are living inside your joints. Anaerobic, meaning because the joints are a place where your blood supply doesn't get to. So there's not as much oxygen there, meaning that's why a lot of people have so much pain in the joints, is because literally there's an infection inside there and these things are living in there and they're melting your joints. Plus they're leaving a bunch of waste products in there, thereby causing your immune system to come at it, but the immune system can't fully get in it. And so it just swells up around it. So it's a fight. It's a war. This is the wars, right? So the two main phyla that have been linked to obesity are what's called firmicutes, or Firmicutes. That's a name of a particular living life form. And then there's another different life form. They're called the bacteroidetes. 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 Firmicutes and bacteroidetes. Bacteroidetes composed of mostly gram-negative anaerobic rod-shaped bacteria. Okay? There is a number of different ones called the bacteroidetes and Provotella. So what that means is there's two little bacterial type of things that if you have too many of these things, they're going to make you fat. And then there's an imbalanced ratio, meaning you have too many of this and then not enough of this, you are going to be obese. Okay? Firmicutes includes Lactobacillus, Clostridium, Bacillus, Streptomyces, and Mycoplasms. So each one of these different types of things. Well, I thought Lactobacillus is good. Well, there's good Lactobacillus. That's the stuff that's in yogurt. And there's good bacillus, but there's bad ones too. Just like there's good Streptococcus and then there's bad Streptococcus. Okay? So meaning like a strep infection, that's what these things are talking about. Did you ever notice that there's a couple or there's a whole family and they're all fat, right? And even the kids look as big as the mom and dad. And then sometimes you'll have one that there's the skinny one that's inside of that one. What's the difference? What it is the immune system is different. Usually what it is it's genetics, but what is also inside there is shared infection. So why the skinny kid amongst all the whole fat family? Because the immune system in that skinny kid is not the same as the immune, and they were able to fight off these fat bugs, okay? And so sometimes it's our genetics that makes us predisposed to that. But again, genetics is not a curse. Genetics just means, oh, well, then that means you should do this. So people that have the fat bugs, is there some sort of natural type of thing to kill these things and help to bring the balance back in? Yes, there is. And again, that's why a lot of people that come from areas where they eat a lot, but yet they eat a lot of fibers, don't have as much of the obesity as we do, because what helps to kill and keep in balance these fat bugs is things like starches and proteins. Low carbohydrate diet can also do this. People that eat a lot of carbohydrates, the sugar eaters, you're feeding these bugs, you're feeding these things that are just taking over, that are creating this pathos, suffering, tragedy inside your body, which is just what we would call the stress of life. But how much is real and how much is fake? How much is fake news? How much of what is going on in your body is your arthritis really fake news? And I would call this fake news, meaning it's because it's being stirred up by something that you just don't know about. And if you took and lived the right way, you could bring it back into balance, okay? Germ-free mice inoculated with microbiota from obese mice got fatter, okay? So what they did is they took mice, and so there's going to be the fat mice, okay? And what they noticed is that these, in particular, the ones that were infected with these type of mice, even fed the same amount of food. What they did is they became obese, right? And what they did is they took some of this cells out of the fat ones and injected it into the skinny ones. So the skinny kid, right? They injected into the fat mouse or skinny mouse, and that mouse became the same fatness, which means it was a shared infection. It was an infection that it was able to get, okay? These findings support the notation that the gut microbiota can influence both sides of the energy balance equation and underscore the importance of considering our microbiome, our microbiome. And so this is the nitty-gritty of where it gets to. The microbiome is referring to this community, and a healthy microbiome is a really diverse and very rich and not overpopulated, but it's not even about it's the right type of you gotta have the right demographics. A really good neighborhood has all types, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's quiet and everyone's mows their lawn perfectly. A really good neighborhood is she's got chickens over there and he doesn't, blah blah blah, and but yet they work together, and there's a lot of variety that's going on in there. Okay, diet. We get it to zinc versus the leaky gut. So leaky gut is, remember what I talked about, which is a lot of gut inflammation can come from because you're paper thin and stuff is leaking out. So how do you thicken up those walls? How do you patch those holes, those little pinholes, so you're not leaking that zinc? Our findings show that zinc supplementation can resolve permeability alterations in patients with Crohn's disease, improving intestinal barrier function, rebuild the wall. Can you rebuild the wall, which may contribute and reduce the risk of relapse in Crohn's disease, IBS, all of these things. Again, can you rebuild it? I also recommend too, on top of zinc, and probably there's a lot of zinc in this stuff, is bone broth. Bone broth, again, if you go to the ethnic way of eating, that's why, and I eat it. I go to the Mexican restaurant. I go to, there's a grocery store Mexican restaurant that is awesome. And they cook food right there. And one of the things that they have all the time is menudo. They go, what, you eat this stuff? Because no Americans eat menudo. Menudo is that spicy broth soup, but it has the hooves of cow hoofs and knuckles and stuff like it. It's like chicken feet, right? When I go to the Asian market, I eat the chicken feet, and they go, what? The old timers that would sit on the porch and suck the knuckles, right? That's what your joint is made out of, and that's what your gut is made out of. That's why they don't have some of this leaky gut stuff all over the world, is because they're still eating. These are not poor people. These are smart people. And again, that menudo broth is awesome. And so I've learned to suck on those knuckles and eat that cartilage that is kind of melted down. And I used to be grossed out by it. Now I'm not. Now it feels great. I can feel it. And what it's doing is it's repairing my gut. It can repair your gut too. If you're repulsed by that, there are supplements that you can have. I'm going to get to that. There are things that you can do to help to rebuild it. I just told you about that zinc. So we talked about, that's why zinc is so important for this virus or any type of virus, because it rebuilds the wall in your nose, the wall in your mouth, the wall in your ears, these things the wall in the whole urogenital tract. These are all mucosal membranes, and the wall in your gut, so that you can hold things in there without it busting through and causing the alarms to go off. Obese patients on low fat or low carb diet, I actually recommend low carb for the most part to start with, for 12 months, the increased the bacteroidetes to firmicute ratio, which correlated in a greater loss of fat. So when they balanced out, so again, the probiotics, when you fix your microbiome and make it more balanced, you don't even have to try to lose weight. It just, because again, could you be a heavy person that it's like, look at them, they don't even try. It's easy for, what's the difference? Is this. This is the main difference. This is they don't have the same infections as you do. Okay, zinc helps to repair and stabilize gut integrity. Now we go to another one, the gut and aloe. And there's 3 different types of aloes that I can get you. Or you can go to, like when you go to the Mexican market, they have these great big huge aloe leaves, and they just cut them open and scoop that aloe stuff out. My wife, she puts it in her her smoothies. We have a liquid aloe that is, they've filleted those and made it into a juice and didn't add any bad stuff to it. You can do that. The Limonene, which are these pills, you break them open and you suck on them or you chew on them and put them in your mouth. Okay. Many health benefits associated with aloe vera has been attributed to what's called the polysaccharides. These biological activities include promotion of wound healing. Okay, so a lot of times inside your guts, when they scope you, right, and you look all red and inflamed, it looks like you have a sunburn inside you. You know, when they put a scope up you to see if you have these problems, it looks just like a sunburn wound or a burn victim. And when you got a sunburn, you put aloe on there. So swallow the aloe and it starts to heal the wound healing, antifungal activity, hypoglycemic or anti-diabetic effects, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, immunomodulatory, and gastroprotective properties, meaning the aloe vera possess bacteriogenic activity, okay, which means it helped to grow through these acids, acetic, butyric, propiogenic acids, which means it's the right soup to kill off the bad guys, but help to grow like a little garden, like a nursery. So the aloe acts as a nursery, which is protects them from the bad guys, but also is like fluffs the nest and like a mother hen that sits on your guts and helps the new babies to grow. So that's a great time to actually add the probiotics and a great time to add other things like starches, healthy starches. This is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority. I got a whole much more to do, but I'm going to take a commercial break. I'll be right back.
If we've learned anything from the recent medical crisis, it's how extremely important it is to maintain our good health. Diabetes, asthma, pain, and other underlying conditions weaken our ability to stave off viruses and heal even minor scrapes and cuts. This is why it is so vital to heal, not just treat, chronic health issues. It is possible to overcome underlying health issues and return to a strong and healthy state, and it can be done naturally without the inevitable side effects of medication. But first, you must make that choice to be healthy. Your next step is to contact Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing Center at 734-985-5891. Jason will get to the heart of what is really causing your underlying health issues. Then he'll create a customized plan that will get you back to your natural, healthy self. Get on the path to better health. Call 734-985-5891 to make your appointment with Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing. Or go online to wrdt560.com/askingtheexperts and click on Strategic Healing. And tune into AM 560 WRDT every Wednesday afternoon at 1 for healthy living advice from Jason Eagle on Ask the Experts.
Okay, everybody. All right, everybody, we're back and we got more to do here. We're talking about the gut wars. And like I said, let me bring it back to, like I like to say, and I love Star Wars, and I grew up as a kid. I had the toys and everything like that, but I love the story because it fits. It is a story that is analogous to what's going on in all of us, not only a physical but a spiritual thing. And hold on one second. A little sip of tea here. Drink tea. I drink lots of tea. It's really good for your gut. Even black tea is good for your gut. But in Star Wars, at the end of the story, it's not about who wins, because at the end of the story, it's not about winning, and it's not about getting rid of even the dark forces. You don't want to just kill them all. And then two, even the Empire was kind of right, which is, we need to gain control of what's going on here. And if we were to able to kind of just be a power that is able to control everything, it would work better. Kind of. But see, that's the problem, is that there's an ebb and flow to nature. And even though it looks better on paper to be the Empire, to, watch the money and better make money and blah, blah, blah. The thing is that the living thing is more artistic, is more creative, and the money people don't understand the creative, right? Because what do you need it for, right? It makes you happy. It is an expression of life. But what the art people don't know, what the creative people know, is just like, you can't do this all day long and not be paid. You have to charge money for it. You got to come to the real world, and you have to, it's got to, somebody supports you while you're doing that. Somebody's feeding you and stuff like that. And so there's got to be a happy medium. That's where the Force kind of comes in. That's where it's even about getting rid of the Jedi, which is, aren't these the good guys? Why do you get rid of them? Because when you have these extremes, what happens is it confuses people, and it confuses the real true thing, which is it's a little bit of both. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a negotiation. It is a happy, like the microbiome is not about killing all these bacteria. It's about having and supporting the system, so you guys live over here, you guys live over here, but we don't attack each other all the time, right? There's emerging evidence that many of these therapies of, for instance, bringing in probiotics, bringing in aloe, bringing in all of these things will help to switch all of these diseases, okay? And how do we know that? Because when you go to places where people eat this way and live in the environment that has not been destroyed, they don't have all the pesticides. When you go to Kenya, when you go to Ghana, when you go to New Zealand, when you go to any of these places where, now there's cities there too, and so that's what I'm saying. Get out of the cities. Get to the places where people eat the foods that are still grown the old ways, and they are moving their bodies, and they're connected to the earth, the rural places, the places where they're still breathing the dust that has a little bit of cow poop in it and chicken manure and stuff like that. We thought that that's bad. No. It actually is the more that you are exposed to these things, but that are healthy and don't have the chemotoxins, meaning doesn't have a bunch of industrial waste and the car fumes and all this other stuff. When you're out in the country, even the dirty things are healthy, because they build up balance. They don't hurt your body. They actually help your body. Now, that's not to say that, if you step on, a stick that has something dirt, you shouldn't go to the doctor, right? It's don't go far too one way. Again, like I said, it's about a balance, right? Inflammatory and immunity. Current Western therapies for inflammatory diseases are suboptimal. Increasingly, patients are turning to complementary. So inflammatory, by taking a lot of anti-inflammatory drugs like steroids or a whole bunch of stuff. There were anti-inflammatory ones that were taken off the market because they were doing a great job, but secret be told, a whole bunch of people had heart disease that came from it, and it killed a bunch of people. And so even though it did this, people with this condition or this genetics, it was a death sentence. And it was a very, very scary game to play. And it's not necessary to play that game when you can start doing this naturally. And naturally is way more gentle. Natural is also, it's the heart of the issue. It's what your body is made out of, right? IBD and anti-inflammatory nutrients. Now we get into this. If you've watched on Facebook or something like that, there's this Dr. Gundry, this Stephen Gundry, the guy who comes on and says, you shouldn't be eating tomatoes, and he talks about eating lots of olive oil, especially the Moroccan olive oil. That's what I've talked about. I actually use some of his research, but he talks a lot about there's a whole science of this, of what's called anti-nutrients, okay? And these are these things that are leptins, some of the things that are in, let's say, beans that don't get soaked, all right? Or even just beans in total. Potatoes, tomatoes. Some people have a genetic system, or their guts are so, especially if it's so paper thin, that it's even the healthy foods, if they have some of these things. So like, for instance, nuts are a very common thing to have anti-nutrients. So people that are health nuts, that are living on almonds and stuff like that, there are people like that, they're very sick and they don't look good. And they may tout it and go, oh, I'm on this vegan diet or I'm this, and they look horrible, right? And they're falling apart. I've found so many cases of this. And again, it's because a seed is this little thing that grows on a plant, okay? And out in nature, a seed falls into the ground. It's either carried by the wind or just falls on the ground. And then it has to germinate. Well, there's a million other seeds that have fallen in that same place. And so there's a war going on there. And so what seeds and nuts do is they have an enzyme inside their body. And as soon as water goes, so they're dried, usually they dry on the hull or something like that. And then it's the water in the ground that then gets them started. And as soon as they germinate, actually before they actually create that little spike, that little sprout that comes out, what it does is each seed of its own species releases a very specific type of anti-nutrients into the ground. And the reason is they're trying to kill the ones that are not them. They're fighting, they're vying, they're getting elbow room. And so what they do is they create these things that block calcium in particular. So the little root cells can't bring up calcium, and the little root cells need calcium, and all these other nutrients that are in the ground. Well, what happens is when a person eats, let's say, a raw or roasted nut, that your gut, the water inside your gut starts to hydrate it, and it thinks it's in the ground. Even though you chewed it up, it's still releasing, and those things get released into your system. And so it does the same thing to your guts. There's been people who have had, as health nuts, who did a lot of peanuts or did a lot of these, and I'll talk later about peanuts too. There's some really bad stuff, mold in particular. These are all things that are in possible foods that can be infections. That's how we got them. And but again, the anti-nutrients is they can block absorption of nutrients, and so you can have people, I think I'm eating great, but they look like they're malnourished. And it's because their system is full of these chemicals that are literally blocking, it built a hard wall, okay? Irritable bowel and vitamin D. Vitamin D3, okay, colitis and irritable bowel and stomach ulcers and joint problems and all of these things. How much has vitamin D, low vitamin D, played a role? How much has low vitamin D played in the Black community, or people who have darker skins, the melanin dominated? That's including Indians and other ones. But especially the Black community has the highest level, especially in America, of heart disease and a number of other conditions. Also the highest levels of diabetes. Okay, why? Because we know it's linked to vitamin D. If you don't get enough sun, you don't produce, and the darker your skin is, the more sun exposure. And if you don't get the sun exposure, and if you live here in Michigan or in Chicago or New York, whatever, you for sure are not getting enough sun. But that's okay if you take vitamin D. If you take vitamin D and take more vitamin D than other people do, let's say lighter skinned people. Now the lighter skinned people, they're not off the hook. They need something else too. So each type has their thing. Okay, it's not racist. This is anti-racist, which is you should really go, you should have known. We should have taught you, and we should have learned ourselves that everybody needs what they need. And if you don't get some of these things, vitamin D, what's the big deal? I thought it's for your bones. No, it's for this gut permeability. It's for this stuff. So keep in mind that the heart disease that is related to infection, related to a blood infection, nanobacteria infection. How did it get there? It got there because of this. The other thing is, as I said, one of the top things that's been related to diabetes is this infection, right? How many people in a lot of different communities, but it's not just the ethnic people in general. It's the ethnic people here in America, but it's also the non-ethnic. So it's white, yellow, brown, whatever you want to call it. We are all on the same page, which is we are being attacked. And we are at a war, but we're not warring with each other. That's the bait and switch. We are not at war with each other. We are at war with ourselves. We are at war with the inside. It's what's going on. And we're at war. It's, first of all, also not physiological. We're at war. It's an information war. It's the war of the mind. And the biggest war is what the Bible says. We die for lack of knowledge. It doesn't say we die for disease. It doesn't say we die because of suffering. It doesn't say we die because of age. We die because of lack of knowledge. And what's the most important knowledge is knowledge of yourself. Who am I? And what am I? And what have I become? Right? That 9 Inch Nails song, what have I become? It's sad that Johnny Cash did a great version of that called Hurt, which is I hurt myself today. Right? How many of these things? I hurt myself today to see if I still feel, and that's a lot of stuff. So like, for instance, even the eating, the obese eating, the emotional eating, that it's these bugs and these living life forms that are driving us to do it. But we participate and we sit there and eat crying because we hurt. And so the food releases opiates and stuff like that. So overeaters and people you're actually an opiate addict. But it's not, people go, well, I'm not doing heroin or I'm not doing OxyContin. No, sugar and this fat and all this others and these infections and stuff like that, it's the same thing. It releases the same type of stuff and your body then releases the opioids in order to block the pain, in order to block the pathos. I am pathos, meaning I'm suffering. I am a tragedy. But we can turn it around. And again, there's nothing like a phoenix, man, to rise out of the ashes. Here's another thing. Mercury and thyroiditis, which is your thyroid condition. Where's the mercury coming from? From leaking dental amalgam. Do you got those silver fillings? They're not silver, they're mercury. Do you got those old-timey fillings? Like, you should only have white in your mouth. The new dentistry and the dentistry is around. And if you have it, work on getting them removed. There's a good biological dentist that removes them safely. Dr. Sue Shoha here in Michigan and Bloomfield, thanks to Bloomfield Hills. Dr. Sue Shoha. There is Dr. Gaddioli, Shelby Pines Dental. There's a number of them that will remove them, but they will remove them safely and so that you don't get the mercury to put back. Dental amalgam, the highest rate of improvement of people with multiple sclerosis are patients that had the amalgams removed, right? Mercury and fatigue. How of your, let's say, Epstein-Barr virus or chronic fatigue syndrome is related actually to mercury. How much of this in terms of your gut infection and all these things that we're talking about is because you're constantly sucking your saliva and you're swallowing your saliva and eating foods and drinking hot coffee and cold things. If you got these dental amalgam mercury amalgams, meaning the mercury fillings, the heat and cold causes them to vaporize. And literally you're sending mercury vapor into your brain, into your whole body, but you're also swallowing it. And so the mercury is literally also kind of like this really bad antibiotic. And the things that grow in the mercury are the really, really bad things. So there's a huge the removal of a mercury amalgam fillings when combined with appropriate treatment resulted in significant symptom reduction on all subjects for all of these different things, okay? Clearly, mercury exposure, infection, or inflammation is in the gut may be a linked factor, okay? So what are some of the common, these countermeasures? What can I do about it? I've got that mercury. I still have these mercury things, and I don't want to pull them out of my teeth and put them back into the system. So taking things like the Mediclay. The Mediclay, this is a bentonite clay. You open the capsules, put them in some 1 or 2 capsules, put it in some water and drink it by itself or drink it with food. Taking Mediclay, it can absorb up to 98% of all of the toxins in that gut. So if it's mixed with the food, it will absorb those, okay? Your gut is your primary immune system. Over 75% of your body's immune systems are found in the GI tract. So we're talking about building up immunity to this stuff. Build it in the gut. Stop the war. Stop the war and be at peace. There's where we need the peace pact in your gut. The gut mucosa, that's the mucus, the inside lining. If you were to cut yourself, slippery on the inside, right? Okay. Where was I at? Yes. So the gut mucosal is the interface between the bloodstream and the bowel that must buffer food, antigens, chemotoxins, probiotics, prebiotics, intestinal bacteria, viral and parasitic pathogens, mycotoxins, and biofilms. Okay, so basically all the bad stuff, all the good stuff. If we have a good mucosal membrane through vitamin D, through the Mediclay, through eating more good, healthy starches, taking the hydrochloric acid with your meals. If you also are a little bit older, taking the digest, which are pancreatic enzymes. By doing all of these things with your food, the aloe, these different types of things, you can soothe this whole thing and turn the tide and stop fighting the war. You're not going to win. These gut wars, who wins? Nobody. You end up dying with it, right? And again, this is inside of everybody. So my big thing is aging really real? Is, people live to this and then you die? Is that really real? Okay, we see it, but what's happening in almost everybody, in fact, everybody, is your body is breaking down and it's constantly stuck in a fight. Healthy bile flow, meaning people with their gallbladder, okay? If you can produce good, healthy bile flow, then you can digest fats better. And the fats, the good fats that we are able to eat, the olive oil and all this other stuff, and nuts and seeds, when are treated correctly, avocados, coconut oil, the good, let's say, lamb or beef or salmon or fish, all this stuff. You spend money on it, but is it absorbing into the system? Well, most people, Americans, don't have good, healthy bile flow. So taking this stuff called the Limonene, which is these little orange oil drops. So literally, people, this is a great thing that anybody could start doing today, is every meal, get an 8-ounce glass of water, open 1 or 2 capsules of the Mediclay, and pour like 2 to 3 drops of the Limonene. There, you're going to suck up all of the toxins before it absorbs into your system, and you're also going to make sure that you can digest the fats, and the fats are very soothing for you. Mycotoxins, this is another thing. Mycotoxins, that's mold. So aflatoxin is one of these very, very toxic molds. It's not a bread mold, but it's similar. The peanut, it's a black mold. So that black mold that can be growing into your walls that can cause lung cancer is known to grow on peanuts. Peanuts are not a nut. Peanuts are a legume. They're a bean. They grow under the ground. And a lot of them get moldy. And in the factory, like if you're out there picking peanuts, some of them are like black. But if you have a machine that's harvesting them, it doesn't see it. They're not eyes, and they don't see it. And so they just mix it all in. And so let's say roasted nuts. Some of those roasted nuts is the mold doesn't even fully get killed off, and now it starts to grow in there. Peanut butter could be one of the worst things because now you've crunched it up and mixed it as like a powder, and then it starts to spread. So it's like mold will grow through anything. I've seen so many people, especially health nuts, that live on peanut butter, and they have a ton of these conditions going on. It really was the peanut butter. So mold, other type of mycotoxins, these are things called mycotoxins, are found in corn, grains, and legumes like peanuts. They can bioaccumulate over the time. So many times the fat. So even when a person says loses weight, and they like the biggest loser, that show, do you know there was a whole bunch of people that lost lots of weight? They looked great, but then they got super sick afterwards because as they were burning that fat, those fats stored a lot of toxins. And now those toxins, because their detox organs were not really working as at optimum function, and they were not on a ton of antioxidants, and they moved too fast. They lost the weight too fast. Now it deposited those toxins. They didn't go out. It just concentrated them. And so now it's like super concentrated, and they had super high levels of toxins, and it created, conditions like Parkinson's and autoimmune disease. There were many people that after they lost that weight, now they had a chronic fatigue syndrome, and they had it real bad, and it's still not gone away, and they have gone to all the doctors to treat it. What does that mean? It's your fat stores toxins. And so when you release the fat, you have to treat the toxins. You got to do something with it. So that's why sweating. So these people should have been in saunas. They should literally have been in saunas yes, they're sweating while they're working out, but we want you to also sweat. They should have also been on lots of laxative type of stuff to get them to go to the bathroom a lot better. These different types of things. There's a number of, they should have done some detox therapies like the mud packs, the foot soaks, these different types of things. Body wraps where you can actually pull toxins, like seaweed wraps. Seaweed wraps are really, they're not just cosmetic. They actually pull toxins out of the body. So these are just things that you can do to actually pull this stuff out of the body. Probiotics, as I said, probiotics. So there's a number of different probiotics. There's the one that's the regular probiotic, that the one that I sell, it comes in this gel cap that is great because it's like a time bomb. And if you swallow them whole, they open up in the lower gut, which is if you're eating yogurt and stuff like that, trying to fix your bowel, it's not going to work because it's so far away and they're gone by the time it gets there. Whereas if you take something that has what's called an enteric coating, then it's able to survive the gut and then it dissolves by the time that it gets there. So it opens up in the low gut. If you want to get it in the upper gut, then you bite open the capsules and suck the juice out of there. Another one is what's called the microbiome. This is a whole bunch of other things, including the most important one, which is these called soil probiotics. So this is what the farmers have. This is what the people on the farm with all of this stuff that they're touching that we would call, dirty, but they've built a really good immune system. So, but if a person's really weak, how can I give them the soil probiotics without making them sick? That's what these are, meaning they're sanitized, but they are these exact probiotics that you would get from the soil, okay? And when people live in cities and apartments and stuff like that, and everything's washed and everything's cleaned, and they're just going from parking lot to carpet to, room, they never have a chance to ever. And so that's why Western society is the worst thing for you. And that's why, because when you go to even third world countries where people are poor, they got some problems, yes, but they don't have a lot of the numbers of these problems, the numbers of heart disease, the numbers of obesity, all of this other stuff is way lower compared to us. And it's just the fact that they are closer to the ground. They're living more simply, they're eating, and they're physically active a lot more. Now, they're under a lot more stress than we are. They are absolutely third world country, and being poor is stressful. So the thing is could everybody be healthier? So even the healthy people that are in third world, they're physiologically but stress-wise. Whereas the people that are living, Netflix and just having a lap of luxury here in America, like even the poor live in luxury. They got TV to watch and bonbons to eat and all kinds of other stuff. But yet it's, so we're sick because of one thing, they're sick because of another thing. We both need something. Everybody needs something. And if we could reach a balance, and that's again, bring it back to Star Wars. Bring this force into balance. And again, the world is in balance. Just copy the world. Copy what the world is doing. That's why the Bible talks about, look at the birds of the air. They are richer. They are the richest because these little baby birds wake up everywhere. And their own home, their own body is their home. They are in the tree. They don't have to build a home. They don't have to find it. They go to sleep and they wake up in the morning and they open their eyes and they go, oh, wow, there's food. I live in the grocery store. It's like from Fantastic Mr. Fox. They come out and they're like, we're in the grocery store. Score, right? So every day for a bird, bird. And if there's not food there, they got wings. They can get up and fly to it. So it was like rich people that have to have all these riches are nothing compared to what a baby bird would be. Could you be like that? Could you be able to really be rich with what is around you? That's balance. This is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority. Until next time, bye-bye.
Listening to Ask the Experts with Jason.
All right, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason will help you live a pain-free, high-energy, healthier life naturally. As a certified practitioner in multiple healing modalities, Jason creates a finely tuned and highly personalized program just for you that will get you back to living your best life. Get started today by calling 734-985-5891 to make your appointment, or go online to strategichealing.us. Strategic Healing is located at 2545
Hi, Dawn.
Suite 106A in Auburn Hills. Ask the Experts with Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing can be heard every Wednesday at 1 p.m. right here on WRDT, the Word Station.
AM 560 is Detroit.
Okay, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.